Hello, I'm Michelle Evans, the Domestic Trades Manager at Conner Prairie. We're in the Golden Eagle Garden today, and this is the beginning of a series that's going to look at our gardens here at Conner Prairie throughout the whole year. It's a great time. You may not think that winter is a good time to think about your garden, but this is the best time to start your garden. We're not going to plant anything today, but we've got to start thinking about it now if we're going to have a garden in the summertime. So what are some of the first things that you've got to think about? Now, I always look, if I'm looking at a new patch, I'm going to look at where the shade falls. Now, it's cloudy today, but if you come out into where you're thinking about your garden in the summer, on a sunny day, then look where that shade falls through the day. And in the wintertime, if you've got shade there, you're definitely going to have shade when the trees leaf out. So think about that. Think about your soil. Is it heavy clay? Is it nice loose soil? If it's heavy, you may need to amend that, add things that make that soil better for your plants. There's a lot of different ways to test your soil. You can buy a kit. This is one that came with some of our tomato seeds, and it tests some of the elements in the soil that are good for the plants. But you can go to any garden center, any home improvement store and get a soil testing kit. You can also check with your county extension office if they do soil testing, or your soil and water conservation district in your area may do soil testing as well, to tell you if your potential garden space is good for your plants. Now, how big do you want your garden? This is a pretty big garden for most home gardeners. It kind of depends on whether you're a brand new gardener or if you've been doing this for a while. Now, I've been gardening at Conner Prairie for 36 years now, and gardening my whole life because my family always gardened. But if it's your first time to start a garden, maybe you want to start a little smaller. 4 by 10 may be a good size to start with, just enough for a couple of tomato plants, some peppers. Now, what you plant in your garden depends on what you like. My dad always planted something weird. One year we grew peanuts, we grew broccoli, things that wasn't normal at that time to necessarily have in your garden, but it was fun for us kids. But if you like tomatoes, plant your tomatoes. If you like zucchini, plant that. Find out what your family likes. That's what you want to put in your garden. If you've been gardening for a while, you're going to get a whole pile of seed catalogs. All you've got to do is get your name on the list, and I guarantee that you will get lots of evening reading as a gardener. Now, we order from about a dozen different seed companies every year. We also save some of our own seeds, and we'll talk about that later in the year, how to save those seeds. But what I noticed last year in the winter of 2020 was that suddenly seed companies were saying, we're not sending out anymore right now. We're out of this, we're out of that, because so many people were suddenly interested in planting a garden. And I'm seeing the same thing in the winter of 2021. So I would recommend, especially if you're interested in heirlooms and some of the rarer vegetable seeds and flower seeds, now is the time to get those seeds rather than waiting until the weather warms up and you're ready to actually plant those seeds. Now, when we look at these seed catalogs, if you're new to gardening, it may be a little confusing. What's an annual? What's a biennial? What's a perennial? We've got some of those right here in this garden. And they are alive, even though it doesn't look like it now. An annual are the things that we don't see in the garden right now. Those are plants that come up and make seed all in one year. A lot of our flowers are like that. Marigolds and zinnias and things like that. We've got biennials. And again, we don't see those in the garden right now because we don't save them. But if you're going to save seed for cabbage, for broccoli, for carrots even, those are plants that will make fruit one year, and they'll actually grow to maturity to produce seeds in the second year. So a two-year cycle for that plant. We've also got perennials in here, and a lot of our herbs are perennials. Also, our asparagus behind us here is a perennial, and our sage right here by the table are all perennials. Those are plants that come back year after year after year. So you plant them once, you've got them for hopefully years and years to come if you planted them in the right location in a spot that they're happy with. You may think, well, why should I worry about seeds when I can just buy the plants later? For some things, it's definitely easier to do plants. If you're not sure of what a baby plant looks like, and you suddenly are trying to pick out the baby plants from all the weeds that are coming up at the same time, sometimes it is easier to plant a plant that's a little bit older and put that in the ground. We do that with our tomatoes and our peppers. We have those started in a greenhouse for us, and so we're putting a good-sized plant in the ground rather than starting with a seed. But the other advantage of seeds is that you can get all these unusual things from the seed catalogs. If I go down to the local greenhouse or Lowe's or Menards, I'm going to find a more limited selection than what I'm going to find in all these seed catalogs. The other thing that's really important at Conner Prairie is our heirloom seeds. Most people consider an heirloom a plant that's been around for at least 50 years, that's open pollinated, which means that when you collect those seeds and replant them, you're going to get a plant just like the one that you harvested the seeds from. If we look at something like an apple tree or a pear tree, if we take the seeds out of a great apple and plant those seeds, the trees that are going to come up and then produce apples, the apples are not going to be exactly like the apple that you collected those seeds from. But a lot of our vegetable seeds, our flower seeds, are going to be true to what we've planted. And so if you look at visit the gardens at Conner Prairie, you're going to see some of those heirlooms that we have gathered over the years, either purchasing from small seed companies or saving the seeds ourselves and continue that variety for years to come. We found some that are so different than what people are used to. The red limas that we tend to grow here in the Golden Eagle Garden, we originally got from an Amish lady in Pennsylvania who had come down through her family. And it has old traits of lima beans in that the pods will split and drop the seeds all by themselves if you leave it on the plant long enough. But also, rather than that starchy flavor that a lot of people are used to with lima beans, it's got a nutty, just a wonderful flavor. That's totally different than most lima beans that people have tried. We've got some of the Lenape varieties that we've had to hunt down or gotten directly from people in the Lenape tribe. And some of those are commercially available, others are not. So if we don't save them, they're harder to find and they may be gone. Once you've got your location for your garden figured out, how big you want your garden to be, it's time to figure out your plan. It works well to lay out that plan ahead of time. That way when you go to buy seeds, when you go to the garden center, you know how much space you've got. You will not be like some of us gardeners who buy more plants than we've actually got room for. But we use a garden planner like this, but you could also use good old graph paper. We use an online garden planner that you can find through Mother Earth News, and a lot of other seed companies, Southern Seed Exposure, and some others have access to this. It's a subscription-based plan, but it lays out the garden for you. It gives you an idea of spacing. It also warns you, if you use it from one year to the next, that you've already planted some vegetables in that same spot the last year. You want to move things around in your garden and not put them in the same exact place every year because different plants pull different nutrients from the soil. So moving them around keeps everything kind of evened out. This year we're going to have some red cabbages, we've got turnips, we've got kohlrabi, beets, peas, all kinds of different things that you're going to see in the garden this summer. I encourage everybody to plant a garden. We're going to put a list of some of our seed sources online with this video, and the next time we get back together, we're going to talk about putting those plants and seeds in the ground. So happy gardening!